The next layer we're going to work with is your color curve. If you remember, we set this up as a regular curve first. We just changed the title to color. When I double click on your color curve, it's going to go ahead and open up this histogram again. Now this histogram has similar information to the levels histogram, but it works in a different way. Here again, we have RGB, which is red, green, blue, and we can change in each of those layers individually by clicking them to red, green, or blue. Now in your color curve, this is where we're going to change the color of your image if it needs any adjustment. Some people like to use a color slider, and I'm going to show you that here really quick. If we go in and let's see, use color balance. Color balance sets up as these sliders. I'm not going to have you use these. I want you to use the curves instead, but this gives you a good idea of what they are. With the color balance, we can work with either cyan or red. Now red makes something more red. The opposite of red is going to be cyan. We also have green, which is going to be either magenta or green. Yellow, which is going to be yellow or blue. These are sort of the photographic colors we're going to work with. Your camera is just recording the red, green, and blue, but it'll also work with the cyan, magenta, and yellow as we change it and they work together. Now, color balance in this way is sort of a crude way of working with it. It changes everything overall. And instead, I want you to work with your color curve. I just threw away that layer into the trash. Your color curve, if I want to adjust something, I can choose the color that I want to adjust. First, if I click on red, if I grab this in the middle, then I'm going to use my arrow keys. I'm going to go up one, then over to the left one, over and over and over again. It'll start to click this up, and you'll see that it's going to make my image more red. That is the same thing as using the color slider and pulling that back and forth. If I go the opposite direction, it's going to make the image more cyan and less red. If I delete that point, it'll take it back to the middle. In this image, the red looks pretty good to me. I don't think I need to change it very much. But the reason I like to use a curve instead of a color adjustment slider is I can choose the area that I want to change the color in. This is my sampler. If I click on the sampler, I can run it over any part of my image and say the shadow of Wyatt's belly here has a corresponding circle that's on the histogram. You can see that move up and down. If I move my sampler into the shadow, notice that it goes down towards the bottom where the tonalities are darker. Now, if I think that maybe Wyatt's belly looks a little bit pink, I can hover this over his belly, click it once, and I've made a point on my curve. That way, if I want to take a little bit of red by his belly, I can start to take a little bit out by starting to step this down with my arrow keys. Now you'll notice as I do that, his skin tone right here actually looks a little bit more neutral to me, but in doing so, it made the rest of the darker areas feel a little bit green or cyan. The beauty of the curve is that I can then make another point on my curve here, because this is pulling like a big rubber band, and I can say, I don't want these areas to go down. I can use my arrow keys to pull these back up and keep those spots nice and flat on my line, which means the only area that I've taken that red out of is sort of this upper portion. If I want to see how that looks, I can hold down this arrow here, that's a half arrow and eye, that shows me what my image looks like first, and then when I let go, it shows me the change. See how it turns a little bit more cool in tone? I think that's a little bit too much, and so I'm going to go ahead and re-click that spot and go back one. That looks okay to me. It's a slight change in tonality, but it works. So that would work for my red. If I go to green, it'll do the same thing. I can make it either more green or the opposite, which is going to be magenta. Generally, if you make a change in either of those, it's going to be very, very subtle. Sometimes in digital photography, the representation of green can be strange, and we have to work with that a little bit. This image happens to look okay, so I'm not going to change anything there. The last color I have is blue, and if I move my blue, it's going to make my image either more blue or more yellow overall. And here, I think this actually looks pretty good, but it might be a little bit cool in tone in this sort of cool decking. So if I use my sampler again and slide over the cool deck, you'll notice that that corresponds to a point right above this peak. This peak is all the information in this light area. So if I want to take a little bit of blue out of there, I can always click this down. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. See, now it's too yellow for sure. Take that back up, and instead just go maybe 1. I think that looks a little bit better. I'm going to hold down my half arrow and I. That's where it was, and this is where I am now. It's a very subtle change, and that is something that we're going to work with as you go through. Sometimes you won't have to change the color at all, but often you'll change something a little bit. This becomes more important when you're working with strange lighting situations where there might be a shift from the light temperature or something else happening. But we always have to adjust the colors just a little bit. As time goes on, color is one of the harder things to see. And one of the difficulties you're going to have right now is we're going to adjust things for your screen. If we're changing from working on your screen to making a print, at that point we often have to make bigger color adjustments. There's always going to be a slight change from what happens with your image on screen to what comes out of a printer or what comes off of a processor. And as you do that, you'll make adjustments for the print rather than the screen. Since we're not in class right now having the opportunity to look at prints and make those adjustments, it'll take a little bit more time to get used to this, but there's subtle changes that you'll work with that are similar to that.